Montana State certification program. For those of you who have been certified, you'll know it can be kind of daunting when you go in and try to start lining up your learning goals with what the opportunities you've taken advantage of. So we've invited KoolAid from the Montana State Library to join us today and give us an overview of what the program is, how the program works, how you can log in the different courses you take, including this one, and ask her questions. Because I think you've asked me questions and I haven't known the answers to them. So this is go right to the horse's mouth. So if you do have a question for KoolAid, please use the microphone. That way she'll be able to hear you. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Hello to everyone. It's great to be able to, I can kind of see your faces a little bit there. It's always great to be a part of Missoula Public Library. Some of you know or may not know that this is the library that I grew up with as a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s in Missoula. And so it just makes my heart really warm to be with you this afternoon and to see such an incredible continuation and expansion of what the Missoula Public Library has meant to so many people, in particular me. So with that, as Elizabeth said, we want to really kind of focus on the questions that you have brought to her and focus on questions that you might have during the course of our time today. And I have a bunch of slides, and I have added the slide file to the chat so that if you want to download it from there, or I'll actually show you, those of you who I was able to register for this session today, you can access the slides from your registration as well. So with that being said, I am KoolAid. I need to get an updated summer photo. That was in the dead of winter. But KoolAid rhymes with Olay. And so if you see my name in a newsletter or somewhere else, don't get confused. It is KoolAid. And I'm the continuing education coordinator at the State Library. I've been in this role since March of 2022. My background is in school libraries and as well as really working with the State Library in the job that I had as the school library coordinator in the Office of Public Instruction. And then part of my time was as a State Library Commissioner and chair of the commission during the time that I was at OPI. So I have about a couple of decades worth of experience with all facets of the State Library. And I'm so excited to be in this role with continuing education. As a K-12 educator and school librarian over the years, it just has solidified my excitement for teaching and learning and professional training. And so it's been a great opportunity this last year and a half to jump back in with the State Library. So these are the questions that were shared with me, and I kind of organized things according to these questions. So we're going to talk a little bit about certification and categories and how that kind of helps provide a framework or a pathway for professional learning and having a balanced background when it comes to continuing education. No matter what your role is, really a value of the certification program. We'll talk a little bit more about the categories. We will look at Aspen, which is the system where you can track independent learning sessions, independent learning events, and it's where you also track for certification if you choose to do that. And then sprinkled throughout are all kinds of resources. I'll be adding links to the chat as well. And in fact, maybe what I'll do before I kind of start talking even more is I'm just going to drop a whole bunch of chats or slide links into the chat. And then that way they're just here and we can come back to any of those things as we go forward. So again, don't hesitate to speak up. The microphone is in the room. We tested that and I can hear you really well. If you want to ask those questions or stop me anywhere along the way, we want this to be kind of your journey through the questions that you have and the information and resources that the State Library can support you with. Okay, with that, so the State Library Certification Program actually just went through some pretty significant changes. And those changes start with simplifying and narrowing the focus of the goals for the program. So for the State Library, our job is to promote continuing education. We want to promote recognition for librarians who participate and engage in that as lifelong learners in our profession. And then we want to, with the resources that the State Library has, provide continuing education opportunities. And so we look at the different types of roles within libraries. We look at trustees who have learning needs. We have library directors who are required to be certified by the state, and to meet and have opportunities for them to grow their skill set in library administration and those important topics to them. And then staff is, that's the majority of the number of people who are served by the continuing education program. And so there are so many different pathways that you can go down as a staff member in growing what your skill set is, no matter where you start, as someone who comes out of library school or someone who comes from a different background. We do want to be able to provide kind of different options and different tracks for you to pursue a goal if you want to move up in your organization. I understand that Missoula Public Library is one of the very few libraries in the state that has some incentive for being certified through the State Library program. So, regardless of your end goal, we want to really emphasize how it's the role of the state then to look at, how do we provide recognition? How do we provide the opportunities? And then demonstrate that impact over time as more and more people engage in the certification program in particular. So I was going to stop in to see if there were any questions or reactions to those 3 goals for the new program.
I think we're good.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. I know after lunch is a hard time to kind of be in a nice, warm, sunny room. So no worries. If you need to jump up and move around, that's not going to bother me either. So I did take a look at the participation in certification at Missoula Public Library. So with the number of staff members, there's a little less than half who haven't participated in the certification program. That means just, you work at the library and I couldn't find any record that you've had certification tracks added to your record. And that's fine. There are many roles within the library that the types of library continuing education may not be appropriate to the role. But that being said, about 24% or 17 people currently have a library administration certificate. There's one of your current trustees who has chosen to do the optional trustee certification track. And then there are 23 staff members, or just about a third of you who have a certification track and have continuing education credits that you're applying to completing that. So that's just kind of an overview. I didn't know if you knew that about yourselves as a group. And certainly, the big caveat that I have is that sometimes continuing education does look different depending on your role and kind of the learning plan or the path that you're taking to be as excellent and skilled in your job as you possibly can be. Hold on just a moment. It's the inevitable. I work from home and a cat ran past the front window, so the dogs are barking. Pardon me for that. This is just a data point. I'm a data person. And just, this is something for you to know about yourselves. And so if there are some of the 29 who it makes sense and this is something that you want to learn more about, I would definitely encourage you to be in touch with me individually if you need some ideas or need help getting logged into Aspen. But I'm going to kind of cover a little bit of that too. So with that, for those of you who do have a current certification track, because our new certification program went into place in June of this year, that adjusted all of the category requirements. It actually lowered the number of credits in each category and expanded the elective credits. And so there may be some of you, if you haven't looked at your record recently, that might be either ready to submit for certification right now or much closer than you thought. So this is the invitation to log into Aspen and to take a look at that record to see where you are and how close you might be. Mentioned the continuing education categories. And so what didn't change with the new program information, there are still 4 categories: library administration, library services to the public, the collection management and technical services area, and then technology. And technology is technology that you use, technology that patrons use, technology that may impact or be used in the context of library services or in the broader community. Technology is a very wide range of learning. It might even include training that you do in productivity tools like let's say things like Google suite of tools or the Microsoft suite of tools. Right now we're about to start an Excel cohort, and I can show you more about that, but that's an example of a continuing education offering from the state library. It's all online, it's self-paced, and it fits into that technology category. And at the end of that, you earn, I think it's 10 or 11 credits in the technology area to add to certification. So the part of having kind of that well-rounded staff and having opportunities maybe to learn a little bit outside your comfort zone sometimes, these 4 categories were really important to maintain in the changes that went into effect with the new continuing education and certification program. And there's different ways to look at this. Even if certification isn't your end goal, if you are tracking your continuing education and you want to be able to identify, well, where might I need to look for classes or trainings that are in an area that I'm not necessarily, an expert in. It's a way to look at your credits and say, okay, where do I need to grow next? Or, oh, even this, in terms of recognition, I really have a lot of training and background and expertise in, let's say, collection management and technical services. This is one of the ways that as you kind of count up the credits that you have and use the reporting tools that allow you to like download your CE record from Aspen, it's a way to be recognized for that effort and that expertise that you have. So that's just a couple of ways that the categories themselves can serve as a way for you to see across your range of training and skills, identify what you want to do next or need to do next, or like I said, celebrate and have that recognition of the expertise that you bring in these areas. So I'm going to pause there and just see, are there any questions about the categories that you might have?
We got one question. Hold on.
Yeah.
Are there categories that cover marketing within these 4?
So library administration is where like communications and marketing would most likely fit. And they're pretty broad buckets. One of the things, and there's a link here in the chat to the new continuing education handbook. The section on the categories has a kind of a more definitive listing of either competencies or topic areas that typically fit into the categories, and marketing communication usually fits into library administration. I'm saying usually because it's also an invitation if you have a training and you aren't quite sure what category to put it into if you're going to claim that credit in Aspen. You can always reach out to me, and I'm happy to kind of talk through what the best fit is. But I think another kind of opportunity with the new certification program requirements is that your professional or continuing education plan is really the driver for what you need to learn and then how you're going to claim those credits. Great question.
That's it for questions.
Okay. All right. As I just mentioned, there is a new handbook. The link is in the chat there, and we can take a kind of a gander through that if we have some time. I updated all of the information about both the continuing education program and certification programs on the web pages. Those pages are specifically linked in those chat links. Aspen and Aspen Help are the other source for whether it's a technical question about how do you enter an independent learning event, something that is maybe sponsored by your library, or maybe sponsored by local government, or sponsored by Web Junction, which is one of the primary sources outside of our own MSL learning platforms that we direct people to. So how do I claim a credit like that? And Aspen actually has help embedded with the knowledge base there to walk you through those steps. Plus, the invitation is always there. I'll have my email at the end of this presentation. You can always get in touch with myself or one of the other consultants, and we're happy to talk through options and bounce ideas off and talk through the specifics of how to do some of these things. So those are kind of the primary areas of resources I wanted to make sure that you knew about. I mentioned the new program went into place in June, and so the certification webpage has been updated. Under the About the Certification Program is where you're going to find one of the places that you'll find the new handbook. But then library director certification, trustee track, staff track, the specifics of those are in the drop downs in the accordion menus of this page. There's information about how to apply, what it means to apply for certification. There are also things where, other special kind of situations where if you complete an MLIS or MLS degree, that makes you eligible for a library administration certificate. So there's just kind of those special circumstances, but all of this is actually in the handbook as well. And I mentioned under the About the Certification Program accordion tab, you see the goals for the program, and then that new handbook is linked right here. It's a PDF. You can download it or just review it on screen as well. Updated the certification program, like the certificates that you can print out when you finish the certification track. So you see the lovely colors and logo here. And just kind of as a general overview, the real changes in the program that went in place in June are around the library administration track. And then I mentioned already that the required credits in each category for the staff track decreased, but the number of elective credits increased. The trustee track stayed the same. And I want to say this, and sometimes I'm trying to find the best words to use to to describe this, and the term that I think we're using now is optional. So in the certification program, any staff member could get certified, but it's not required. Like there isn't anything in the public library standards that requires all staff members to be certified. The staff track is there to kind of provide the roadmap to a well-grounded, well-rounded background in training in library science and services. So for those of you who would want to get certified, it basically is a way to have kind of more defined pathway for learning in each of these main categories of the profession: library administration, library services to the public, collection management, technical services, and technology. And then, the 40 elective credits can be made up of so many different things. That's why it's really good to develop your continuing education plan with your supervisor. Those of you who are supervisors, we have some resources, sample kind of templates for continuing education plans, but they come back to, what does someone need to learn in each of these categories to help them grow their skills, close a knowledge or skill gap, and be able to just be high performers in their job. So staff track is optional, but there's ways to use it to help you get to where you want to be. Library administration, this was a big change. So directors have to be certified, but anyone actually could use the library administration tracks to get a library administration certificate. And the big difference now is that if you've never had that library administration certificate before, then you would start with an initial certification track. And it's 60 units total over 4 years. The emphasis is in library administration, and then 30 elective credits. And then once somebody has completed the initial library administration certificate, then they're just going to be on a renewal basis after that. And that's 60 elective credits earned over a 4-year period. So it really opens up the opportunity for you to design the learning path and learning plan that makes sense for you. You've got the basis with the initial certification. If somebody comes in with a master's degree in library science, they're going to get that initial certification with the completion of the degree, and then they're going to start on a renewal track. So this is something that was really important to our task force, and then was approved by the commission, that we have more flexibility and allow you to define what it is that you need to learn to move forward with that. So I want to just pause there and see if there's any question about this optional, who has to do, who's required to do what, and those changes.
I think we're good.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so this is a screenshot from Aspen. And so if you are one of the 29 who has not added a CE track to your Aspen record, these are your choices. You could choose a trustee track, that's 15 credits. But I would recommend a library staff track or the library administrator initial certification. You pick which track from the drop down, click add, and then all credits that you start to add to your record are applied to that track. So those are your 4 choices now. Another big area was, how do we define continuing education credits? The categories give us the 4 main buckets of kind of professional background and training, but is credit only available for a workshop that is put on by a library organization? Or another question has come about, could we have a book study around a topic related to our work, and could that be eligible for continuing education credits? And so what we're doing with the new handbook and looking at the greater flexibility in the elective credits is to say that the structure for continuing education credits is important, structured learning. But that structured learning could be defined by a continuing education plan that you have with your supervisor, or that is kind of determined by your library. And so that's where, we can have more of a conversation down the road about, what category could a particular, if we use the book study model as a structure that would be in a continuing education plan, then the topic would determine what category it would go into. And then the other thing that isn't changed is that 1 credit equals 1 hour. So very much like a Carnegie unit, that's still, kind of the thing that defines learning in K-12 and higher education. We're still we still have to go back to how much is a credit. And the learning can be so many things, but a credit is 1 hour of effort for 1 credit. So that's something that, as you look at putting activities into a plan, to be thinking about, okay, this is how many hours we're going to spend doing this. It's going to fit into this category. And the templates that I have for CE plans include kind of those fill in the blank sorts of things. So do you have any questions about what continuing education credits could be?
Good.
Okay, all right, excellent. So I'm excited about this. I'm excited to talk to more folks about what credits are and how to get those implemented or put into independent learning events. So, and this was one of the questions that I came into today with, is how do you claim independent learning events? And so you have to log into Aspen, and then you click on the continuing education tile, the green books, and then that's going to take you to the screen where you can either select events from a drop-down menu, and events that are sponsored by the state library or by the Library Association are already in this drop-down menu. So if any of you went to the MLA conference in Billings, every single session from the Billings conference is in the drop-down menu in Aspen to choose from. So you don't have to remember the trainer, you don't have to remember categories or titles or that sort of thing. If it's MSL or MLA, you're going to find those already pre-populated into Aspen. If you are, if you get sent to, let's see, I'll pick on library administration a little bit. If you get sent to a human resources course by your local government as part of the required training from the city or county, Missoula County, then those are the sorts of things that you would need to enter as an independent learning event. And there's a button to press to add those. I'm going to actually skip the event calendar for just a second and bring over. Hopefully didn't. Let's see. Just as an example, and forgive me, my login path is a little bit different from yours. Yours, you just click on login, you enter your email address and the password that you have set up for Okta. Mine automatically authenticates because I'm on the state network. So continuing education. This is my record. I'm working on a renewal track because I completed both a staff track and a library administrator track prior to this. Here's where I would, and let me know if it's helpful to zoom in a little bit more. I can do that just so it's maybe not so obscure on the screen for you. But yeah, for adding a new track, if you haven't had a track before, add independent learning event. This is that mega drop-down menu. It always, it's organized by date. So after after each day goes by, you'll see anything new that happened either on the date that you're looking at it or prior to that. So there are so many things, and some things that don't appear on the event calendar because they're specific to a group of people. So for instance, I entered today's training into Aspen and registered all of you into that event. So it won't actually appear in the drop down because it's already been applied to your CE record. But let's say I did go to MLA and I went to changing perceptions through outreach on the 15th. All I have to do is click on that, click go, and it adds it to my continuing education record. If you had to go to that HR training for the city and you need to enter that as an independent learning event, that's what this button is for. Definitely, I'm going to say it again, MLA and MSL sponsored events will be in this drop-down menu. So look there first, but if you need to enter a new independent learning event, you just click on that button. And you will need the information that's asterisked. You'll need the title. You'll need a beginning date and time. It's nice to have the end date time, just so you can help yourself calculate the number of credits. The sponsor. And so there are a ton of sponsors. If you do something with Baker and Taylor, or if, let's see here, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are just a ton of things, including one of our go-to resources, which is WebJunction. So WebJunction is here as a sponsor. If for some reason the sponsor isn't listed in that dropdown, you can enter that information. But notice there isn't an asterisk next to a lot of these fields. There's a lot more information here than you actually have to put in, but notice that you have to put in a trainer name. And then the last two things are the continuing education category, and you'll see the 4 categories here. And then the credit value, and the help desk or the help text here gives you that definition of, 60 minutes equals 1 unit. We do go in half-hour increments. So if you're doing a half-hour training, internally, whatever it might be, you can add half-hour training opportunities as well. Then you hit save, and that record is going to be added to your continuing education record. Any questions about that? I went through it a little bit quickly, but I'll say that in Aspen Help, there are step-by-step instructions as well as videos, helper videos that kind of walk through some of those things a little bit more slowly.
Got one question for you, KoolAid. Let me get them.
Yeah, awesome.
Just wondering if the change position on your screen there is if you've changed your job or if you changed your job.
The change position.
It's up there.
Oh, the green, that's just a menu that I see. A regular user wouldn't actually see that. I wasn't able to mask some of those things off of my screen. I'm sorry. So what I do want to point out too is that, if I actually added an event, let's say it was in library administration, you can see your credits in each of the 4 categories, and it will give you a total of the credits that you have in a particular category. You can also export your credits to an Excel spreadsheet, which is kind of nice if you need to provide that to someone for review. Like, let's say you're sitting down with your supervisor and you want to say, well, these are the things that I've done so far. What do we need to do next? What should I, do you have any ideas? Just having that spreadsheet is a nice way to kind of keep track of that yourself too. Okay. All right, I'm looking at the time here, so I'm gonna just touch really quickly on the Aspen events calendar. I mentioned that I registered all of you for today's event, and it does not appear on the Aspen calendar because this is kind of a private event just for Missoula Public Library staff. But if there are, let's say, Tiny Tech Training, which is the last Tuesday of every month, for 30 minutes, if you wanted to register for that event, all continuing ed events on the calendar are in green. Then that's where you'd see the information. If it's an online training, you'd have the Zoom link, and then it gets added to your CE record by registering through the calendar. That's just one of the things that's listed both on the certification and the continuing education web pages under where can I find continuing education opportunities. I'll just show you really quick what that looks like. So from the state library homepage under services to libraries, you can go to certification program. About the certification program, that's where that handbook sits. Your ready reference for all things certification and continuing education. And then where can I find continuing education opportunities? So there's a direct link to the Aspen event calendar. MSL Learn, which is our online learning platform that we launched in January. We have so much content and growing content in the YouTube channel. We transitioned away from Vimeo a year ago and are exclusively using YouTube now. So there are tons of things that would appear in that drop-down menu in Aspen to claim credits. And so the recordings for sessions are located here. I do a monthly newsletter for continuing education, and I highlight just a couple of things depending on your role or in different categories that I've become aware of over the course of the month. Those are kind of my recommendations. MLA has stuff from time to time, and then WebJunction. I can't recommend WebJunction enough for kind of the depth of topics and courses, shorter hour-long courses to longer sequences of courses that are just right there for free for you to take advantage of. But that's where you find that information. Let's see here. All of these things I threw links in the chat for. And hopefully I kind of designed this with those 4 questions at the beginning to make sure that we touched on each of those areas about how the categories play into having a well-rounded opportunity to grow skills across different areas of your work, how to do those independent learning events, how to access resources for continuing education and certification, and then that certification program itself. So I would love to hear if you have any other thoughts or questions or ideas that I haven't even considered.
This is Elizabeth KoolAid. So things that I did before KoolAid presented today was I went in and I made sure that there was an account, or that you were all listed and your positions were set up in Aspen. But then the responsibility is on the employee, correct? Then to go in and begin the certification process. So
Yes.
I create your existence. And so you did that with a few people who are new and who were there when we looked at it together. So everybody should be listed in there. In terms of getting an Aspen account and logging in through Okta and all that, Is that just a standard link where people will say create new account, or how do they get their
Yes.
password and all of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to log out of Aspen. And Aspen's linked from the MSL homepage. Aspen is on this MSL services. You can do the G word, which is Google Aspen, and you'll find it. But when you come to this screen, just pay close attention to this login with the red button. If you have problems, or if you have never logged in with Okta before, then you would click on contact MSL support, and that's going to generate an email to the support person, and that will signal them to help connect you with that Okta account. It has to be that has to be in place in order to log into Aspen, and then claim credits and do the continuing education part of it. With Aspen itself, if you're just interested in looking up events, you can look up information about your organization, individuals. Those don't require a login, but the continuing education stuff does.
So in response to that request for support, they'll get an email that will provide them with the login information, and then they
Yes.
get the passwords. Okay.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions? I know. Okay. We got one from Lucas here.
Hi, Lucas.
Is it not working?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So with the recent vote of the Montana State Library Commission to withdraw from the American Library Association have any effect on certification?
No. Short answer is no. The certification program is a state program, and the requirements are adopted by the commission. So if you are looking, if you're a personal member of ALA and you take their courses and classes, they have a ton of continuing education through ALA. So those would be independent learning events that you would just enter on your own.
Will's going to ask a question, but I'm going to sneak in before he does.
Yeah.
So if you've been taking classes or attending courses up till now, and now you're just learning about the certification process, can you do retroactive entry of courses that you've taken, and how far back can you go?
So the program is 4 years. So you have 48 months to take credits and then earn the certification. So if you have never had a certification track before, it would need to start as of the day that you the way that you would start your track, and then contact me so that we can take a look. If you have entered credits prior to starting the track, then I can work on the dates on kind of the back end of the system to help capture those credits that you've already taken. But it would anything, so today is July 17th, 2023. Anything older than July 17th, 2019 would be too old.
Good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. There's kind of a subtle follow-up to that I don't want to confuse anyone, but I've gotten this question enough over the last year or so. What if I watch a recording of something that's older than 4 years? And the answer to that is, if it's relevant, if it's current, if it's information that is accurate and all of that, it really doesn't matter what the age of the recording is. And WebJunction is a good example of that. They have a number of courses that are more than 4 years old that use content and that is still accurate, relevant, kind of the best in the profession in terms of how to learn those skills or knowledge. So if you have a question about the age of a particular video or that, that's less of an issue than claiming credits that are older than 4 years.
All right, Will has a question.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just gonna ask about all the classes that are listed on the Aspen calendar. If they're online courses, is that generally through Zoom, or is it a hodgepodge, is it Microsoft Teams, or is that just up to the sponsor?
So oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Did I hear all of your question?
You did.
Okay. So we exclusively use Zoom for webinar type presentations, workshops, and that sort of thing. So in Aspen, when like for instance, today, I'm recording this session. After I process the recording and put it into the YouTube channel, I'll replace the Zoom link with the link to the recording for the session. So that's the case with, I'll show you an example here. I did a webinar last week on the continuing education program. And so that appears on the Aspen calendar. And you get the overview. There's some links that I shared, some of the links I actually just shared with you, and the online meeting URL, that goes to the recording in YouTube. And I can't see if Desiree's there in the room, but her name popped up at the beginning of that recording because she jumped on early. So that's kind of how that works.
Does anybody have any other questions? This is your chance. Oh, Mary has another question. Or for you.
So this is more for library management. When do we carve the time out to do this?
So that's a good question. Some of you are pretty good about keeping me informed about your educational interests. And so just as with any other schedule request, I'll get an email from you, and that's a really great way of just saying, I'd like to attend a training. That becomes really vital if it's not recorded, right? Maybe it's something that it's happening between 1 and 3. So you need to be provided with some opportunity to be off of a public station. For somebody like you, Mary, working from home, there's a lot of just like personal discretion that you're granted because you do your own time management. But for any of the rest of you, if you see there's a conflict, like you want to do a training session, but it interferes with your obligations to the public, email's the best way. As soon as you can let me know, the sooner it'll appear on the schedule. It'll be off a desk. Same would go for off desk time. So if maybe you want to take a recorded course and you want to do it while you're here, same thing, just send a request. Many of you already do that, but if you weren't aware, that's probably the best way. Any other questions? So for those people who have already signed up for a certification track, this class, this particular session that you just held will already be in their list, or do they have to do anything at this point? Hello? Are
So
you
for
there?
everybody who attended today, I will mark you attended in the registration. And then for people after the fact who might watch the recording of the session, then they would be able to email me, or we'll just Elizabeth and I will communicate if anyone needs to claim credit for the recording. But yeah, you were registered. We did that for you in this case. And so everyone who attended today will automatically have the credit approved, and it just appears on your continuing education record.
There you go. You're one step closer to certification.
Yeah,
Oh, got another question.
yeah.
Would we have to enter the training with Brooke this morning ourselves, though? That one I assume is not in the system anywhere.
That would be a good example of the independent learning that KoolAid showed. So you would go ahead and fill out all those fields with the information that was asked her.
But we sent agenda, so I think she entered everything.
Oh, did you add everything or just this session, KoolAid?
I just added this session.
Oh,
And Christine's always really good at reminding me, and so maybe she will help. I will send as a follow-up email to today's staff training day, a list of all you attended today, and then what track or which track you can put it under. I mean, like which category.
I had a question real quick too. If one of us enters it in, could it be added to the list of existing ones so that not everybody has to enter it in themselves, but one person could do it and then it becomes a thing and then everybody else could just select it?
So KoolAid, in the past, I can remember sharing with Pam Henley,
Mhm.
like our staff training day agenda, and she,
Mhm.
is that something I could do?
The way that I think roles are set up in Aspen, I would have to, I'd have to find out if that's possible. But let's just say that, I mean, you have 69, 70 staff members. And so if you want to just communicate with me, it doesn't take me long to enter those events. Yeah, so let's just be in touch. So it just makes a lot of sense that, especially for a large number of people, you folks represent a certain not insignificant percentage of library workers in the state of Montana. So let's just work that out, and I'd be happy to help with that.
Okay, so KoolAid and I will work to get that done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions before KoolAid leaves us today? She is extremely approachable and very, very friendly and more than willing to receive emails. So you can reach out to her, although I'm willing to act as your liaison if need be.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't mind, I would love to have your feedback on today's session. You can snap the QR code, or I'll put the link to the evaluation form in the chat as well. But we, love to hear from you, and love to have any ideas that you might have in order to improve the services that we provide.
Well, thank you very much, KoolAid. Thanks for giving us your time today.
You are so welcome. I'm so glad we were able to work this out. Have a wonderful afternoon and just soak in that Missoula summer.
We will, from inside this air-conditioned room.
Yes, perfect. You got the whole view and the comfort of the AC. I love it.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.